Are we live?
All right. Hi. Yeah, we are.
All right.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the final session of our series, Let's Talk Mental Health. And as always, before we jump into the session, we're going to start off with our land acknowledgement. So Uplift Black acknowledges that we are situated on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe people. The Anishinaabe include the Ojibwe, Ottawa, and Potawatomi nations, collectively known as the Three Fires Confederacy. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture and committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect with all First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people. We would also like to thank JD Engineering for sponsoring this series. And so, as with all of our previous sessions, we are super lucky to have Debbie hosting our final session tonight. And I just want to take a moment to thank her for all of the hard work that she's put into this series and all the time that she's devoted. It would not have been possible without her commitment and the passion from all of our guest speakers as well. So Debbie is an influential mother of four and a registered psychotherapist who works to erase the stigma associated with mental health and give people the tools they need to share their story. Debbie has extensive experience in mental health advocacy as a workshop facilitator, clinical consultant, and television host. Her work takes an anti-oppressive approach, is focused on healing, and is informed by a trauma and anti-Black racism lens. Tonight, we are also joined by Natasha Pennycooke, who is an award-winning psychotherapist, international speaker, and clinical consultant. In her over 11 years of practice, Natasha's work is guided from an anti-oppressive, healing-focused, trauma-informed, anti-Black racism lens and racial justice framework to unpack and challenge Eurocentric ideologies, systemic oppression, and generational traumas that have been detrimental to racialized communities. She has presented at a number of international and national psychological conferences and is sought after for her passionate speaking style and expertise on mental health, coping, racial trauma, and healing to speak at various corporate and community events across Canada and beyond. Natasha is also a founding member of the Association of Black Psychologists, the Toronto chapter, actively volunteers with the Keep Six organization, assists on the advisory board of Cujo's Kids Zone, is a contributing author for Black Love Online magazine, and is the current recipient of the By Black People's Choice Award for the Best Canadian Counselor of 2020. Tonight, Debbie and Natasha will be talking about bridging the gap between equity and mental health services. So if at any time you have any questions or comments, please drop them into the Facebook comments and we will get to them there. And I am going to hand it over to Debbie and Natasha now.
Thanks so much, Rachel.
Thanks,
Thank
Rachel.
you. Listen, I know that you are you won that award. I voted for you.
Thank you, Debbie.
That you deserved it. So I was thrilled to hear that you won it. And I am so happy to be speaking with you. I think it's about time that we sat down and had a conversation. So I'm so glad that you could do that tonight.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's great to be here. And you know what? I'm glad that we're getting this opportunity to sit down and have this chat. And yeah, it's definitely overdue. And I think the one time that we had a chance to meet in person was not enough. So loving that we're doing this tonight. Loving it.
Absolutely. And Natasha, you have so much experience. You've spoken to a lot of people. You've done a lot of work. And so this right here, this is our final night of this series. And so I think it's only fitting that you would be here tonight to have this conversation with us. So thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me, both you, Rachel, and the whole Uplift Black community. Thank you for having me.
It's a great community. So thank you. You know, I know that we would be remiss to not speak about this tonight. So I want to. Listen, I have a lot of questions. I have a lot of passion. I have a lot of anger. I have a lot of everything about this subject that we're going to talk about right now.
You and me, sister. You and me.
Yeah. Well, it just boggles my mind. But, you know, we were sitting beforehand and just talking about, wait, how many children did they find? How many children did they find? You know, I know 215 in BC. And, you know, at one point I thought, okay, 371, but I think we were up to 751 in Saskatchewan alone. And I can't even begin to, I don't even know where to begin about why this is so wrong, why it's so passionate, why people are so angry about it.
Yes.
What are your thoughts? What do you?
Oh gosh, my thoughts, Debbie. Like this is the thing. Like today was a busy day for me. This is like I was telling you before, I did an earlier talk at U of T for some of the staff, right? Some of the racialized staff, speaking a little bit about racial trauma. And now we're here today. And in between these two conversations I've had, quickly go on my social media and I said, what?
Yeah.
I said, wait, so you found another set of little children's, and both you and I are mothers, right? And we both have little people who occupy our space. So like, you found another what? And then I saw it and I said, it's an additional 751 in Saskatchewan. And I was like, are you serious?
Yeah.
So you're telling me there are 215 little children unaccounted for in one part of Canada, and in another part of Canada, 751 little bodies, unmarked graves, who were taken from their home and brought to a institution to be cared for, or whatever ideas it was, and then something happened and they were thrown away.
And they never go home. They never go home to these parents that they're taken away from.
No.
And parents don't know where they are.
No. It's so sad. I was I don't know if you know, I was born and raised in Montreal, and I was listening to a French talk about the Indigenous communities in Quebec. And it was in French, and they were talking about how, one woman was talking about how what the village looked like after all the children were taken away.
Oh, gosh.
That there were no children in the village. Just imagine that, right? Like, again, you and I are mothers. Imagine you're home, all of a sudden your kids are gone.
I mean, listen, some days I'm like, okay. But that's just for a second, all right? That is just for a second. But for you to come and take my kids, and I don't know who's caring for them. I don't know where they're going.
Exactly.
When I'm going to see them again.
Exactly. So this older woman, this elder, was talking about how there was no children in the village. There was no children's toys and stuff and clothing and shoes, and no laughter, and there was nothing, just adults.
Yeah.
And just like, for some reason, when I was I was listening to that, and just the idea that, imagine like a town, kind of a ghost town, but no like little feet, no little laughter,
nothing,
gone, just taken away. And my heart, like, I was already feeling raw when I was listening to that. But then when I heard that, and just the expression, and again, this was all in French, we could hear the emotional expression of the people who were speaking.
Yes.
And just the heartache of that.
Right.
Like, this is, you know what? Canada needs to come out. Something needs to be said about this. This is horrific. And this is not just something that happened years ago. You know, when people talk about like slavery was 400 years ago, all of that, there are still the remnants happening today.
Exactly.
Right. I think the last residential school system, I think that closed in like was it the 60s, the early
70s? I think it was the 70s.
Yes, it was that was just yesterday.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Yep. I worked with a man that was part of that 60s scoop, right? Where they came in. So I worked with him, and just the pain. You know, he's a therapist as well, and he works with the Indigenous community, and just the pain of what he went through. And every time he talks about it and how the tears come, I think, oh my goodness, I can't even imagine. I saw this picture on Facebook today when we were talking about this, and it was a picture of a couple of Indigenous children that were standing there, and in the caption, it was with a child whispers, "Oh, they finally found us."
Oh. Oh God.
Just and we are celebrating our country in a week.
Okay? There's a lot of talk about that, right? There's a lot of talk of people saying that we shouldn't celebrate Canada Day. And you know, the interesting thing is, so one of my early experiences working in Ontario was working in Brantford, and I was working in at the parole office out in Brantford.
Ah, okay.
Okay, Debbie, sorry about
Yeah,
that.
that's okay. That's okay. There
I
you go.
froze for
Yeah.
a second. Yeah.
That's okay.
So I was working out in a parole office, and I don't know those of you who know, but there's a large Indigenous community out in Brantford. And I
Yes.
remember, and this was like a July time, and I was speaking with someone, and I was like, "Oh, what did you do for Canada Day?" Right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And this is where like really my education started, because this individual I was working with told me we don't celebrate Canada Day
Oh,
because that
wow.
represents the day that our ancestors and our peoples and our culture and our language was
Wow.
told that it's not enough, that it's not
Wow.
important. And it's so interesting because for me, growing up, Canada Day was always like a really fun day and fun and all of that,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Fireworks and all of that. But when this individual told me that, it was like whoosh. Oh,
Yes.
I get it.
Yeah.
I am sorry. And as a clinician, we have to be able to put ourselves in situations to say, you
That's
know what,
right.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand, but you
Yeah.
educated me just now, and I
Yeah.
appreciate that. And
Yes.
he's like,
Yes.
we don't celebrate it.
I went to a Canada Day party, and this was just when I was a new therapist. I went to a
Yeah.
Canada Day party, and somebody had mentioned, they had a cake, and it was so great.
Yeah.
And a young lady comes up, and she's just like, "Oh, yay! Celebrate the country that is terrible and has hurt our own people." And blah, blah, blah. And I looked at her, I'm like, "I love my country," and she's like, "Oh, well, good for you, but you should know this is a terrible country." Oh my
Mm.
goodness. And from that day, I know that I'm blessed to live here as
Of
opposed to
course,
other countries.
you can hold two truths at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. And my truth right now, oh, it's hurt.
It's
I'm
her.
looking for it, and
Yeah.
I'm looking for that goodness in my country right now. So
Yeah.
a lot of
Yeah.
pain. There's a lot of pain.
Yeah. It is. There's a lot of pain.
And
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of pain.
yeah, our conversation tonight is about definitely about mental health. We are going to talk about the services and the inequality in receiving those mental health services. Um, and I could imagine that for the Indigenous community as well at
Yeah.
this time. So I'd
Yeah.
love to have this conversation from your perspective and what you're seeing about being able to access services when we really, really need it. So thank you for being the safe space, Natasha, honestly. And thank you for sharing. So I think I'm going to start by kind of asking you about your own journey.
Yeah.
And what started all of this for you? Why are you here right now?
Oh gosh, what a great question. Why am I here? Why am I here
Yeah.
doing this work? It's funny because I always say this, that studying psychology, all of my degrees are in psychology.
Mm.
I always say psychology saved my life.
Ooh.
Okay. Psychology saved my life. And of course, psychology in itself has its own stuff, but for where I
Yeah.
was at the time that I was there,
Yeah.
psychology saved my life because I had gone through such a childhood full of I guess what we call in the field adverse childhood experiences,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Um, for those of you who don't know, there's something called adverse childhood experiences. And I think I want to say there's eight. There's eight,
Yes.
right? I
Yeah.
think
There
so.
is. There is
There's
eight. Yep.
eight.
Yeah.
There's eight. And of those eight, I experienced six of
Ooh.
those eight, which is high for any of my therapist colleagues.
Yeah.
That's a lot, right?
Six out
That's
of
a lot.
eight.
Six out of the eight.
That's a
If I'm
lot.
remembering all of them correctly,
Yeah. Yeah.
six out of eight. So I grew up in a household where my father is an alcoholic, a physically abusive alcoholic,
Mm.
and that really shaped a lot of my life, right?
Wow.
Just those experiences of violence, of the physical violence, the emotional violence, and also a lot of times the feeling of it, right? Like
Mm.
the emotional side of it was I don't want to say neglected, I want to say was not met, right?
Okay.
Was not. So when I say the emotional side of it, the idea of how hard it was to be in that household, there was no recognition and validation of how hard it was. That's what I
Oh,
mean. That's what I
okay.
mean.
Okay. But was it recognized at all?
I don't think so. And it's interesting because recently having some conversations, I there's times when I don't think that it was recognized then, and there's times when I still don't think that it was recognized now, how difficult of a household that was
Okay.
growing up, right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting because people see me doing this stuff, they see like these awards and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's so important to tell both sides of the story. And I love that you're asking, what
Yeah.
how I got here, because when I
Yeah.
say psychology literally saved my life, psychology taught me how to understand
Yeah.
how these different experiences shape us, these different experiences mold us, these different experiences are a part of us, but how do we move through them to understand them, to get to a place of healing and a place of safety, right? And
Yeah.
there's so many times where I have struggled, and there are, and to be honest, there's times when I still continue to struggle with those feelings of being enough, those feelings,
Yes.
that the things that come out of being in a traumatic childhood, right? And
Yeah.
this is why, to answer your question,
Yeah.
this is why I do what I do. This is
Right.
why I work with people who do have difficult childhood experiences, who have the traumas, who have, I've worked for a long time with with different folks who have gone through, whether it's the criminal justice system or sexual assault or physical assault or violence against women and gender issues, right?
Yes.
So all of the experiences that I have gone through has definitely shaped what my interests are in, because I get it. I've lived it. I get it. I can see it coming a mile away in my clients. Right? Even
Right.
if my clients are not there at a space to talk about it, or even they're so used to it being invalidated, I can see it, I can pinpoint it, and I can make space for it because space was not.
But so is it fair to say though that you then now have lived through it, you've healed from it, and then that's why you're able to help others?
Oh, good question. I would say that, and I say this all the time on my different social medias, healing is a constant journey, right?
Yeah.
Healing is a constant journey. So I would not sit here and say, I am healed 100%, that's in the past from it.
Okay.
Depending on where I am in my life,
Yeah.
there are things, there are remnants that do come up, and then I have to take that step back and be like, oh, okay, I got to deal with this. I'm triggered here. I'm going through this. I know intellectually, I know this is connected to this. I need to take some time.
Right.
I'm okay, right? And you probably know, as you might see this in your clients as well, being able to make the space for different things, and knowing that, the traumas that we go through, and especially when we're triggered and re-traumatized,
yes,
like that layer and those stuff start bubbling up again to the surface.
Yep. 100%. Yeah. Some of us ignore it though. Some of us decide that this is not, right?
And you know what? And I speak about this a lot with my clients as well, because I recognize it. Sometimes the ignoring it is not the avoidance, but it's the I'm in survival mode right now.
Oh yeah.
How do I understand myself? But how do I understand that my need to protect myself today is not the same way that it once was? And that's where a lot of people get stuck, right? That's where a lot of doing the trauma work, that's where a lot of people get stuck. There's this idea that the trauma is always going to look like how it once did.
Okay, say that again. Say that part again. That was good. That was good. I gotta write that down because I work, right? Like it's okay. Sorry. Say that again.
So a lot of people, when they're going through things, right? Like say we're going through something today. Sometimes for people, the traumas that are happening today, right now in the space, remind them, and they're connected to the traumas that we once went through in our lives.
Right.
And a lot of times what happens is we think we have to deal with it, cope with it in the same way that we once did. But we have to let people know that the space that we're in today, the traumas that we're dealing with today, yes, they're going to be connected to those things in our past, but we don't have to deal with them in the same way, in the same vein that we once dealt with them.
That's a good way of putting it. That's an excellent way of putting it. Really
and
good.
As doing the trauma work, as you know, I primarily do a lot of trauma therapy. it's so important that we make space for the stuff that has happened in the past, but also get people to understand and how to move through it.
Right.
How do we move through it? How do I understand it and have the understanding of the conceptual foundation of it?
Yes.
So I can move through it and understand, where am I today?
So it's not about, so it's not about moving over it, under it. You got to go through it. You can't go around it.
Go through it. You can't go around it. You can't jump over it. You can't dig under it.
Yes.
We got to go through it. We got to process it. We got to go through it. We have to allow space to understand the feeling of it as well. Yeah. Right? Because the feeling of it, and I love that we're having this conversation today, because as we're talking about like bridging the gap, part of the gap is the stigma, the mental health stigma. That's right. There's this stigma that, oh, I shouldn't deal with this and I shouldn't talk about this because it's going to make me look weak. It's going to make me look vulnerable.
Yeah. And we talk specifically about the Black community. We could talk about the BIPOC community.
Oh, we could talk about, we can talk about the BIPOC community, but also even with the term BIPOC, right? We have to understand the BIPOC is a lumping of us racialized people.
Right.
So when we talk of the lump, we have to also make space for that there is a Black community of Black communities.
Yes.
There is an Indigenous community of Indigenous communities.
Right.
And so on and so forth, whether we're talking about our Asian brothers and sisters, our Southeast Asian brothers and sisters, we have to make space that there are different communities within those communities.
That's right. And the way they handle mental health could be different.
Yes, the understanding of mental health, the language around mental health, the approach to mental health, they're all going to be different based on which community we're speaking of. Because even within the Black community of itself, whether it is from the continent or from the Caribbean or from somewhere else across the globe, there may be an understanding that's a little bit different.
That's right. That's right.
Making space for that.
What was your understanding? Because you did work in the Caribbean, right? So
I did,
seen that too. What was your understanding of mental health growing up?
Yeah, so my understanding of mental health growing up, I guess it was from a place of that stigma that I just spoke of it being weak, of it being weakness, of emotions being negative, of emotions showing emotions means that you're not strong, that you're weak, that you have to hold your head up high, especially as a Black woman. Yeah. Right. And I think a lot of us can relate, whether it's you and I or those others who are watching. It's recognizing a lot of times as Black women, we are told that we have to take care of everyone else, that we cannot even focus in on what's going on. And for a lot of times, even now, there are times that I find myself having to unpack that because I've definitely internalized pieces of that. So when we talk about the mental health stigma, yes, I'm a mental health professional and expert and things like that. But I still very openly talk about, I grew up with a lot of mental health stigma. It was also one of those things where what happens in a home stays in a home and we don't talk about it. Right? Or okay, you need Jesus and you need to pray it off, or you need to pray and fast some more, right?
Yes, that's all you need.
That's all you need. And I'm not saying that you can't have space for all of that, but how do you then have space equally? Equally, right? So yes.
And that whole idea of what happens in the house stays in the house.
What happens in the house stays in the house. You don't air your dirty laundry. You don't take the house problems outside, which actually perpetuates the stigma if you think about it, right?
That's right.
It perpetuates the stigma.
I do talk about this story a lot. You know, I had a relative who recently had a baby, and there was a lot of mental health things that had happened. And you know, I had another relative say, oh, you know, just make sure that you don't tell your work about it. She was a nurse. Like, don't make sure your work doesn't know that you're going through some issues, or that you saw your doctor, or you're going to see a psychiatrist, because you might lose your job, you know. So, and that's the stigma that I have. Like, if anybody finds out that there is any kind of mental health issue, you could lose your career. They're going to think that there's something wrong with you, that this is a thing that's going to be held over you. So don't let people know. And this is, you know, my family's from Africa. They're a Black family. And this is what they believe, what they continue to believe, even today, even me doing the work that I do.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
they wouldn't, they don't even believe I see Black people. They don't believe that.
Yeah. You know what, Debbie? I love that we are having this conversation, and we're both registered psychotherapists, and we're able to say, yes, my family holds a lot of mental health stigma. There are some of it that I still hold as well. And knowing that we're making space to normalize it because this is part of our lived experiences, right?
Right.
You had asked me about what it was like working in the Caribbean. I was actually did my my practicum training in Jamaica at the University Hospital on a psych ward, on a psychiatric ward. And that was literally in my career the best experience, one of the best experiences of my life that has a lasting impact on me.
Okay.
The reason why is that my father's family from Jamaica. So not only did I feel like connected to my roots, but it was also about understanding mental health from a Caribbean perspective, right? And also knowing that there is the big stigma, as we're talking about, around mental health, but then being able to see Black psychologists, Black psychiatrists, Black counselors, right? Black mental health practitioners who are also doing the work. So yes, there's a stigma, but there are people who are still doing the work, such as you and I here today.
Yeah, but isn't that amazing? You're doing your practicum and you're seeing Black people doing that work as you do. Because when I did my practicum, I had a supervisor that was Black, but that was it.
Yeah.
You know, and I thought, oh, wow, okay, we're doing the work. But that was it. But you got to see that. Amazing.
I got to see that. I got to see the staff, right? The hospital staff, the doctors, the nurses, the mental health nurses, the psychiatrists, even myself being a part of the interdisciplinary team when we're talking about the different clients who are inpatient or patients who are inpatients or outpatients, everyone looking like me.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. There's something about that too that has really set the foundation of the work that I do.
Okay.
Being able to understand mental health, the stigmas around mental health, but also the stereotypes that exist around mental health.
So let's talk about that for a second, right? So you talk about seeing people that look like you.
Representation.
Yes. So when you have a client that sees you and sits down and talks to you, I feel like when you talk to somebody that looks like you, get it.
Yeah.
You understand. How important is that?
So the representation piece is very important. And when I speak of real representation, yes, I mean like the seeing me, that's important. There's also the representation of being able to talk about the feelings, the mental health, the stigma, and all of that, right? Because that's representative as well.
Yes.
For myself from a personal and professional perspective. So, you know, I spoke a little bit about my childhood and things like that. I'm very comfortable to say that I've gone to therapy. I have sat on this side and I have sat on that side.
There you go.
As well, right? And having the representation for myself, going to therapy, seeking out a therapist, a psychologist, was really important because I wanted someone who understand without me having to spend a number of sessions or pieces of every session to fill that person in, right? And I think that's the piece, right? There's this idea that you as, and I get this from my clients equally, you as a Black woman, you understand as another Black woman what it's like to go to a store and might be judged or followed and things like that. One of my I used to work in a community health center here in the Toronto area. And I will always remember this. One of my favorite clients that I've ever worked with, they said to me, we had, you know, called on the phone. Okay, I'm Natasha. I have space. I'm going to take you on. Okay, I'm going to come in tomorrow. That day came, tomorrow came. And as I went out to meet the person, the first thing this individual said was, "Oh, thank God you're Black." Right? It's like, I wasn't sure over the phone, but oh, thank God.
Yeah.
And it's just, and I think that is so symbolic because it's
yes, I can relax. You get it.
I can relax. You can get it. I'm gonna talk about this, and I don't have to censor myself, or I don't have to only bring part of myself into the therapeutic relationship.
Right.
I don't know if a lot of practitioners, whether you are Black or from another racialized community or white, if you understand how that is for clients to be able to bring their full, complete selves into the therapeutic relationship.
Right. And I think
It's
we
so
need
important.
to understand that. Yeah, I think we need to understand that. I think we also need to not be afraid to ask for or look for a therapist that look like us, that understand that. I think some people feel like, to not be afraid to do that.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, if we want to go elaborate a little more, the whole idea of bringing your full self into the therapeutic relationship, it's important because then that person is not segmenting their stuff, segmenting pieces of themselves to be healed. It means they could bring their full self.
Yes.
And all of the different interwoven, intersectional pieces will be attended to, right? And this is important for this conversation. How do we bridge that gap in mental health services?
Yes.
That's the piece.
I'm so glad that you brought that up, because as you were talking about, your experiences and seeing somebody who is Black and was thankful that you were Black. When I started doing it, I had a practicum, and my first client was a Black woman, and she came in and she sat down across from me, and she's just like, I'm so happy to see you in this kind of position. And I said, oh, that's wonderful. Thank you. And I'm just starting out, but I appreciate that. Right. And
right. I can imagine you're like, okay.
Yes, I'm like, okay. And then she says to me, don't get used to it, because this is the only level you're going to get to. You're not going to go higher than that. And
gosh.
I thought, what? Like, no, the white man will stop you from achieving more. So I'm happy to see you here. I know, right? Gosh, very green. I'm like, I don't know what. Okay. And then it became a learning opportunity for me then to help educate her and to work through those interwoven things that you could find is, why did she think this way? And it was a lot of issues that we had to unpack for her. And it came to the realization that, okay, it wasn't the white man that was holding me back. I thought it was. I thought that it was a lot of racism that was happening. She grew up in Mississauga. So I was just like, oh, right?
Yeah,
right? But diverse, but she's still
diverse, but still in Canada, right? I think Yeah, I think that was such a great opportunity. It's exactly what you said, being able to pinpoint. And this is why, for me, I work from an anti-Black racism lens, because exactly what you pointed there, think about it. For someone to come in and sit down and say, okay, yeah, you're doing this real great. This is all you're going to get through. Imagine the understanding of Black rising through the ranks from this individual. Imagine the experiences. And this is why, again, that I work from an anti-Black racism standpoint, because how do you tease that out of someone? Right? How do you not, especially for individuals working with racialized staff, whether Black or BIPOC, but how do you take that out of the relationship, out of the self? That is something that this individual has clearly experienced, the impact of racism and the impacts of racial trauma.
Exactly.
If you don't address that, you're not getting this person to that healing space.
But she couldn't get there with a white therapist. If we
well,
could be...
let's be real, right? Like, let's be real.
I don't know if she could have said that exact same thing. She had just lost her job. She was blaming her manager who didn't like her because she was Black. Like, there was things that she was bringing into that room that I don't think she could have said in our session.
Maybe not. And maybe not. It's interesting because I also do some clinical consultation, and clinical consultation really for other therapists. So whether you're a registered psychotherapist or a clinical social worker or a psychologist, I do consultation.
Good.
And a colleague of mine, a white colleague of mine last year, around when Regis Paquette was killed and around when George Floyd was murdered, came to me and said, I need your help. I
Mm.
have a client who identifies as both Black and Indigenous,
Mm.
and they're really, really guarded. They're really holding on to some like gaps and barriers. And I think that they're hiding stuff. And I said, okay, well, how have you spoken about identity? I was like, oh, I've never spoken about identity. I'm like, how could you not speak about identity when what's happening in the world has a direct impact on this person that you're working with their identity? How do you not bring that in? So when you spoke of, Debbie, that, a white therapist may not see it, there's a lot of truth to that, because you have to address what some people call the elephant in the room, but you have to address what it is directly on, to say, you know what? You're a Black client, or you're an Indigenous client, or you're whatever you identify as. Get them to talk about their identity, because their identity has a huge, huge implication on who they are and how they see themselves and how they navigate this world.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's interesting that some people don't get that. And when I say people, I say therapists, right? It's interesting that sometimes is missed.
I think so. And especially as we're having this conversation on a community level, these are the pieces that the community is looking for, right? These are the pieces that the community feels are missing in a lot of the mental health services, or even healthcare, right? Like, put healthcare as the umbrella. In the healthcare services that are there, where are the pieces that speaks of the identity and the intersectionality and the different pieces of the self?
Right. Where are they? So,
where are they?
That is a very, very good point. I want to just kind of continue on with the bridging that gap for people and the mental health services. Why is there a gap? Like,
whoo. Why is there a gap? I mean, let's just put that out there as one of these like questions just to sit and ponder on, right? Let's not be uncomfortable with that silence, but why is there a gap? I think the gap, if we're going to relate it back to what we spoke about at the top of this hour, was, look what has happened with the residential school systems. Look what has happened with colonialization. Look at what has happened with, I know, my ancestors, right, who were taken across what they call the Middle Passage and things like that. Like, when you have peoples who think that their way is the right way, or their way is the only way, and other people need to conform to that, this is what is one of the things that creates that gap. Right. And when now you look at policies, you look at procedures, you look at different things throughout healthcare. Are these policies and procedures inclusive of all? Are they inclusive of all? And this is something that we really, as a people, as a Canadian community, we have to really start understanding and start digging this up. Are the policies and procedures that are out there, whether it is in hospital systems, in healthcare systems, in criminal justice systems, in education systems? Are these policies and procedures inclusive for all?
Let's pause on that, because that's a very, very interesting idea that you brought there, right? Because we have policies and procedures that are just supposed to apply to everybody. Right? Like this, we're talking about the medical system. Well, this is the way it's done. It just applies to everybody. You don't ask questions and you just do it. So nobody asks questions. Nobody kind of says, wait a second, that doesn't work for me. It doesn't fit for me. And why don't we ask these questions? Why do we just kind of follow through and say, okay, that's the way it is? I I've told this before, and I really am reflecting on it these days. But I've had 4 children, and all of those had been C-sections, and C-sections is major surgery. It is major surgery. And just the fact that, I can go about and have these surgeries is great. I live in this country. I pay my taxes. I get the free health care, to say. And I had my last child last year, and I was sewn up, and I was told that I'm going to take Advil or Tylenol for the pain. And I thought, okay, my first one, I had something stronger than Advil, Tylenol, but okay.
Yeah.
Even for my third one, and so, I'm there, and I'm okay, I could do this. And I went to my doctor afterwards, and, he just wanted to check on me and see how things are going. And a few days later, and I said, I've been taking Advil and Tylenol, and I'm in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
I'm in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
He's like, well, can't give you anything else. I said, oh.
Why not?
He said, well, I'm worried about addiction. And he came right out and said that to me.
He came right out. Okay. I was waiting for you because I was going to make a speculation. I was going to make a speculation. I was.
He literally came out and said that to me. He's like, yeah, I'm just kind of worried about addiction. So just continue on, rotate, say 4 hours, take the Tylenol, and 4 hours, take the Advil, make sure you drink your water. And I left. And, my husband says, does that sound okay to you? That you would have this major abdominal surgery, they cut you open and tell you to go and take an over-the-counter medication. You just go to the shelf and pick up the medication that's going to help you. And no, it doesn't sound okay. And he thought that I was going to get addicted to it, but I don't know what to say, right? Like, I feel like, how do we go through life? How do we go through these policies and just not say anything?
So it's interesting, right? And thank you for sharing that story, Debbie. Thank you for sharing that story, because I think it grounds a lot of that conversation that we're having.
Yes.
Right. About equitable healthcare.
Yes.
I've heard stories about that before. Actually, just this week, I'm actually doing a clinical consultation for a mental health center in the Toronto area.
Yeah.
And someone shared that too, that there are certain people who would come in and do not get the medication that other people would get because of the stereotype of addiction.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And here you are.
Yeah.
And this is, when we talk about power, when we talk about privilege, a girlfriend of mine, a clinical social worker, really good friend of mine, talks about power, privilege, and powerlessness.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So and for everyone out there, you, Debbie, there are positions when you are in power and privilege, right? Like there's a lot of privilege in the roles that we hold.
Right. Yeah.
And very much at the same time, there's some powerlessness in being a Black woman.
You're right.
Right?
Yep, you're absolutely right.
And in that story that you just shared, there's such a powerlessness there.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yes.
Powerlessness there.
Yes.
I connected to the system and the stereotype and the worldview that individual saw you as.
Yes. To think that I would become addicted to this, and really what he knows about me doesn't really indicate anything that I would become addicted, but the color of my skin.
Right. Yeah.
It's the color of my skin.
Yeah.
My husband, who is white, he was coming to appointments with me. He couldn't during the pandemic. So my OB didn't know that, I have this husband that is not the same color as me, but he would come to my appointments. And I didn't know why. I thought he just wanted to be part of the whole birthing experience. And he says, you don't understand why I come to these appointments, because I know. He's a paramedic. He's like, I see it every day.
Power and privilege.
Yes.
And powerlessness.
And powerlessness.
And powerlessness.
He knows and he sees it. And that's why he's
every day.
Yeah.
Yes. To advocate for you.
To advocate for me, because he's like, how did you not see it? And I thought, oh. And I didn't. I think maybe I was naive to it. Maybe I didn't want to see it.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of people who there's a lot of our communities who have the idea and the notion that white is right, or coming to Canada with the idea that, the doctors know best and the nurses know best and things like that. And that's ingrained through a lot of cultures, right? I mean, we know there's a lot of cultures who look at kind of like the big careers, kind of like, the doctors and the nurses and the lawyers and those kind of things, right? There's sort of privilege with that. But there's also this idea that because of the privilege associated with those roles know best for me.
Interesting.
And some people don't ask the questions. Some people don't ask the questions. I have a similar but not similar story as yours. In February, I had a medical emergency where I had to go to the hospital, and I was terrified. I was terrified, not so much for the medical emergency, but I was terrified of how I was going to be seen. Right. I was terrified of how I was going to be seen because I very much understand the healthcare system. I did my practicum in a hospital. A lot of my early jobs were in hospitals and hospital related.
Yeah.
And knowing that my husband, he couldn't come with me because it was COVID.
Yes.
I was even more terrified. I was like, okay, I'm going through this. But what am I going to see? Am I going to be judged as a woman, as a Black woman? Are there going to be people who can actually take care of me? Am I going to be assessed negative? I was terrified.
What? Wow, Natasha.
Yeah, I was terrified. Not only for what I was going through was pretty scary in and of itself, but I was also terrified for how I was going to be seen and if I was going to be helped. And I think there's a lot of members of our communities that may go through the similar thing. And let me tell you, I was so thankful that day that the medical staff who took care of me, they were all racialized women, right? Okay. So all I had different women, all racialized, and took very good care of me, thank God. And shout out to all that whole staff of that hospital.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, I was scared.
It's so how do you, and this is the other thing, how do you go through, like for me, I was naive and I just stay, I'm sick, going to the hospital, not even thinking that. And then on the other side, people think about that all the time.
People think like this is something, yes. And this is why I always say, when we talk about mental health is not solely the, people think about mental health as like kind of the big things, the bipolar, the schizophrenia, and things like that. Right. But you have these worries and these fears and anxieties that do have an impact on our mental health as well.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
They have an impact. And for me that day, it was having a huge impact on my mental health because I was like, I'm going through a physical health thing. Yes. And I need help. But also now my mental health is being impacted because I'm wondering if I'm going to get the physical help that I need.
Oh my goodness.
Right? Because when I show up into the room, I'm a Black woman. No one knows that. No one knows that I have an award. No one knows that I'm international.
What you're doing?
No one knows that. I'm Natasha Pennycooke.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So we're talking about physical health. Yeah. What about the mental health though? Yes. When somebody wants to get mental health services.
Yes.
So here we're breaking that stigma. We're erasing that stigma and saying, you know what? Something is wrong. Something's going on. I need help.
Yes.
Do you see these barriers up for people who are racialized, who need that mental health support? Are you seeing that? Is it real?
The barrier is real. The barrier is very real. Okay. The barrier is real, and the barrier is also multi-layered, right? Depending on someone's availability to access of mental health services, financial means, right? Community means, also someone's background. And when I mean background, I mean, of course, culture and language, but also their criminal history background, right? There's all of these different barriers that interplay to someone getting access. Because if you think about it, right, and if you think about those, what are they called? Oh, goodness gracious. The different things that are out there that impact a person's mental health. So whether it's housing or food security, the different thing like that, right? Like, you know the word, but it's
I
not
know.
coming to me. Anyways, I mean, not to stay within like psych jargon, but for all of these other things that do have an impact, right? The food security, the housing, the employment or underemployment, these kind of issues to access, we have to understand they all have they all have an impact on our mental health.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
They all have an impact on our mental health and being able to access. So when we speak about access, we have to understand, and the reason why I say this, because when we think about access, we have to understand that it's not only one thing that impacts our mental health, that there are a whole bunch of different things that impact our mental health. So when we're saying, like, I like to work from a preventative lens, as opposed to the cure lens. Right? The cure lens is like, okay, something's wrong with you, take medicine, da da da. But if we can work really from a preventative lens, let's secure food, let's secure housing, let's secure employment, which will help someone understand and deal with their mental health better. Because you don't have food, what happens? You're worried, you're undernourished, you're irritable, you're fatigued,
I could give you a
fearful.
pill. Yeah, I can give you a pill, but that doesn't help you get your food.
It's not going to help you get your food.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Throughout the pandemic, there's been so many people who have lost their jobs.
Yes.
Right. There are so many people who have lost their jobs. There are so many people who cannot secure housing. Look what happened in Toronto at, was it Trinity Bellwood Park?
Oh gosh, yesterday.
2 days ago. Was it yesterday? 2 days, something like that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Earlier this week.
Yes.
You have so many people who have lost jobs. Who cannot secure housing. Housing in Toronto has gone up throughout the pandemic when there's so many people who have lost their jobs, right? And we all saw the police services who were there and mounted on horseback. Someone had to pay for that. I'm just gonna spit that out there. Right?
And there were a lot of them, and they're probably, working overtime too. So
and then all the security with their like neon green vests. Who's paying for that? Who paid to put the fence up? Who paid for the fence? All this stuff.
Yes.
Right?
We paid for it.
We paid for it, but how about instead of using that money to criminalize homelessness?
Yeah. Where could it have gone?
Where could it have gone? What about, bringing food trucks so that people can get meals?
Yes.
What about bringing those? I've seen these like portable showers and things like that. What about that?
Yeah.
There's what about using the money to have extra shelters, or even a lot of places have been using hotels as shelter. What about that?
Yeah.
So when we really speak of mental health, right? When we're talking about mental health and access to mental health and barriers to mental health, all of these are barriers that have a huge impact on our mental health.
Right.
When we go in a little bit deeper, if you think from that community level, now we have all these like CHCs, community health centers in communities.
Mm-hmm.
We also need to think about, okay, are we really looking at what the community needs, or we're thinking that we're just going to put these centers there and have them run, but not really looking at the ground, boots on the ground level of the community's need, or the makeup of the community, right? The ethnic makeup of the community. So
that's a good question.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? Looking at the makeup of the community, the ethnic makeup of the community, the language makeup of the community, and then employing peoples who represent the community.
Yes.
Because then that also talks about safety.
That's a good word. Safety.
Yes. Safety. It talks about safety. Not only physical safety, but emotional safety.
Do we feel emotionally safe? How often do we feel emotionally safe?
That's a great question. I think we should throw that out there. I know that there's people watching, people may have questions.
Yeah.
Right? From a community level. Yes.
Right. Emotional safety. And that's, you know what, I got to be honest, you know, I don't think a lot of people think about the emotional safety. We think about safety. Do I feel safe in my community? Yeah, sure. I feel safe. Emotionally safe.
Yeah. Emotionally safe to access and to go get mental health services.
Yeah.
That's another one.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The community centers that may be set up in some communities, are they spaces where you feel emotionally safe to go get the help?
Is that about not being judged? What is that emotional safety that, you know, you wonder about? Like, is it not feeling judged when you go? Are they going to understand where I'm at? Are they going to be able to support me? Like, there's a lot of things
There's
there.
a lot. It's all of that, Debbie. It's, am I going to be judged? Am I going to be stigmatized? Am I going to be seen? Am I going to be heard? Am I going to be validated? Am I going to be labeled as, I don't know, hearing auditory hallucinations if I start talking about my spiritual self, about the dreams that I've been having and things like that, right? From a lot of people from various cultures.
Yes.
Those things hold merit.
Right. Yeah.
So we want to have, like, lots of various community peoples want to feel safe when they go to access these mental health services. So right, it's like the whole thing around us now trying to talk about bridging the gap and having access. We need to look at, from a government level, and these community centers that are being placed in the communities, are they safe? Are they representative? Do they really speak to the community? Do the people in the community health center actually go into the community to learn about the community?
Right. Because so you could have a mental health agency, as a clinical agency, right smack dab in the middle of a location that, you know, you would see a lot of poverty. You might see mental health issues. You might see a whole lot of things going on. But do the people in those buildings go out to actually see and witness what is happening and meet the community where they're at?
So they can gauge an understanding. That alone is bridging the gap, right? That alone is bridging the gap. There are a lot of mental health agencies throughout the GTA in Ontario, but sometimes the community doesn't feel comfortable or may not understand what's going on in those buildings. And then you might have the people in the buildings who are saying, I don't understand why the community is not coming. Bridging the gap.
Yes. Is that some of the work that you do in your clinical consultations? Is that something that you look at? And do we need more of you to go out there and teach people this?
So that is definitely some of the work that I am doing in my clinical consultation. And like I was saying before, I do clinical consultation one-on-one with other clinicians. And I also do clinical consultation from a larger scale. So if there is a community health center that has a mental health team and they're looking to really get their staff to understand what's going on in the community, I myself and my team can definitely come in and, you know, have some consultation sessions and really go through all of this stuff, the self, the safety, all of it.
Yes. And then once you understand the community that you're working in, you go out there and you recognize what's happening. That's that emotional safety. I feel safe.
I feel safe because I've seen you and I've spoken to you and you've given me space to understand, and you haven't judged me, and you've understood some of the barriers that I go through, and how I'm looking for housing and I'm looking for food security, and this center has a food bank. Oh, I didn't know that. Right? Like, these are the things.
Yes. You know, I know a lot of people who are dealing with mental health issues. I can't find the help. Right? And you know, there's a lot of help out there, but I can't find the safety. I can't find.
I think that's
safety.
what it is.
Yeah.
I do think that's that is what it is. And that's what I've actually been noticing over the last year and a half of COVID, right? People are looking for, where do I feel safe? Because one thing I've started to recognize, and you know, and I'm kind of on the fence here. I'm not sure which one it is. Because I do this work, I also know, and I have met a lot of people doing this work. So I know the people having the groups or the free workshops or different things like that, right? Probably same thing with you, you know, other people and other clinicians. So like, I wonder this, in my mind, I'm like, okay, there seems like there's so much out there, mental health services that are available and free services or low cost services.
Right.
But I'm still hearing people saying they don't know where to go. So I think it's kind of twofold. It's like the stuff are there, but are the people who are marketing their stuff, are they actually going into the community to market it, to let people know that it's there? Or is it just like at a certain level that people are staying, and then the other people who really need it are not being able to access, and then the people who are offering saying, well, no one's coming, and things like that.
So
right?
There's this thing where
there's a gap.
I should do like that, right? There's that gap. I should do it like that, right?
There's a gap.
It's like, it's there. I need it. How do I get there?
Where do you go through?
Where do I go?
Right?
Yeah.
Where do I go? So I know for like different friends circles that I have, people are like, oh, Natasha, I'm looking for this. I'm like, okay, don't worry, I got you. Go here, go here, call this person. I think there needs to be more of that, right? The people who are doing the work being able, like, how can we connect? How can we connect? And there are some really great community centers throughout the GTA who really cater to the communities that they're working with. There's some great places, don't get me wrong, right? There's some amazing places who are doing that. I know a lot of the work that I do with Keep Six as well, they're really like boots on the ground and into the communities. But we do need more of that. We need more of that. We also need these different spaces to collaborate with one another.
Oh, that's good. That's a good point. That's a good point, because we're out there, and I'm talking about, people of color who do the work, really collaborating and saying, hey, let's come together and make sure that, the community knows that we're here and that it's a safe place.
Yes.
And come and let's talk and let's heal and continue to heal.
Yes.
Are you seeing differences in gender too, when it comes to, say, Black women and Black men in terms of accessing support?
So that's another really interesting question, Debbie. I think historically, for me and the work that I've done, I have seen more Black women. However, over the last little bit, I would say throughout the pandemic, the number of Black men that I've seen has also gone up. Right? And I don't think that is because Black men are only now looking for support. I think Black men have also been, right, there's this, I guess, if we want to call it a stigma or a stereotype of Black men, especially of men in general, but Black men too, to be strong or to hold on to anger and to be tough. And of course, we can go in historically from colonialization where that comes from. But I think also for Black men, it's the same thing. It's looking for the safe space. Where am I not going to be judged? Where am I not going to be told to man up? You know how problematic like those things are, right? And right. And I'm not saying that people who say it that they don't mean well, but it's about understanding the implications that this has as well.
Exactly. So when you say man up, that means I can't talk about my feelings. I can't talk about the emotions that I think, because I need to be a man.
A man, right?
Right. Ooh, wow. Okay, so let's make sure that we're getting all of this, because it's so good.
I know.
So good. As Monique says, it's juicy.
It's juicy.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
So if you could just kind of sum up what needs to be done, in your opinion, is there work to be done? Are we doing that work now? And are we off to a good start? And what else needs to happen?
Yeah, that's great. That's great. There's work being done, right? People are doing the work, and God bless them, they're doing the work. I think what needs to happen is the work that's being done cannot only be racialized folks who are doing the work.
Ooh.
Okay. The work that's being done, it cannot only be racialized folks that are doing the work, because right throughout the pandemic, yourself, myself, some of our colleagues, we've been inundated. We've had waiting lists out the door, right? We cannot be the only ones that are doing the work. Okay. There has to be whether government level, community level, family level, the work needs to be done on various levels. And the government, yes, they've done some work, but more needs to be done. Right? More needs to be done. I think it's interesting because there's a lot of talk around like evidence-based practices of psychotherapy. We've heard like different people, and those of you out there, tell us if you've heard this before, right? Those evidence-based practices. Not that I have anything wrong with evidence-based practices, but how do those practices fit with the communities in which people are working with? That's my thing. Because if you're going to help someone with their mental health, are you actually doing the help or the harm? Right. So I think from a government level, more funds needs to go into the community to undo some of the harm and put in some more help, right? Undoing and
okay. So unlearning. Okay.
Well, yeah, I guess it would be the unlearning, but what I'm really saying is like recognizing how some practices may not fit with all communities.
Got it. Yeah.
So recognizing that, okay, maybe this modality is really good for this community, but maybe this modality is not the best for this other community.
Because of the harm that might be.
Because of the harm.
Got it.
Because of the harm that it may actually ensue, right?
Yeah.
And I think another thing is, and again, this goes back to what I said before about preventative. It's recognizing that the sitting across a desk, sitting on a chair is not the only thing that's therapeutic, right? There's dance modalities, there's paint modalities, there are peer support group circles, there's healing circles.
That's right.
There's a whole bunch of different things that can also be therapeutic that I think that from a government level, money needs to be put into. So there's more of that fits with that community.
Absolutely.
Right? Maybe it's like, maybe in certain communities throughout the GTA, maybe a drumming circle is going to be more healing.
Right. That's right. That's what you connect with. That's what
you connect with, the movement, the beats of the body, and like all of it, right? Maybe that is more therapeutic as opposed to some of the more Western modalities that seem to be pushed more. Right?
That's right.
So this is what I mean about understanding the communities in which you're working with. And in order to understand the communities, you have to be able to see it from a different perspective as opposed from a Eurocentric standpoint.
That's right. That's right. So what you basically are saying, though, is that it's not just, when we say, see a therapist, and if you want to see a therapist that looks like you, that would understand what you're coming from, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
But can somebody from a different, it is. But somebody from a different culture, different race can learn those things as well. Understand where, say, Black people have been hurt and what's going on in their community, to be able to sit down and have this conversation with them, to sit down and have this therapeutic and do the therapeutic work with them, because they are doing that allyship work. I don't know how to really.
Yeah, maybe it's allyship, but I think it's also understanding that therapy is not the only method of therapeutic work.
Okay, got it.
Right? Western therapy is not the only modality of therapeutic work, because therapeutic work is really about, how do I heal these aspects of myself?
That's right.
That's the therapeutic work. How do I heal these different aspects of myself that may have gone through trauma, that may be hurt, that may be holding on to ways of coping that actually are causing me more harm than good?
Got it.
So it's recognizing that maybe having, maybe having a paint night is therapeutic.
Yeah.
And being able to talk about the flow of the paint and the music and how that really connects with you. Maybe having a drumming circle, maybe having dance therapy, maybe having a healing circle, maybe having a group where we can come and say, you know what, tonight's topic is race and racism. And let's talk about the hard topics.
Yes.
Right. So it's really about that, not therapy is therapy, is therapeutic, but it's not the only modality of receiving therapy
Right.
and what's therapeutic. And I think that's important from all levels. When we speak about the gap and when we speak about equity in mental health services, we need to remember that what fits for one may not fit for all.
That's right.
Right?
That's right. Is where we need, like what you're saying is that's that bridging that gap. That's how we bridge that gap.
Yes.
And understand that we are all coming from different, we need to be open-minded, thinking outside the box. That's my thing too. Like, okay, let's think about what's going to fit, what's going to work.
Yes.
And that's okay.
And that's okay. It's okay.
I love it. Yeah, I love it. That's where we're going to bridge that gap. Oh,
that's how we're going to bridge that gap. That's how we're going to bridge the gap. And that's a lot of the work that I've been doing with some colleagues in clinical consultation. It's trying to help people to get it and to be able to bridge that gap, especially for, you know, as we spoke about at the top of our hour today, how those policies and procedures, some of those policies procedures do not fit for the communities in which the individuals are working with. So how do we bridge that gap and starting to make the policies more equitable, whether it's having, you know, inclusion statements, but really living by these inclusion statements, understanding what trauma is, because trauma, I mean, a lot of people are talking about, what is it? Trauma informed care and all of that. But what does actually trauma mean?
Yeah.
Right. When you boil it down and you break it down for maybe the Black community or the Indigenous community or the Asian community or the Southeast Asian community, what does it mean for these communities?
And I always say trauma looks different for everybody.
Trauma looks different from it. Thank you. Yeah, it does. It's not just one little statement and one little blurb and one policy.
Right. Yeah. It's different for everybody. So that's keeping an open mind to that. Are you worried about our culture? Are you worried about are you worried, or I mean, there's sadness that we had talked about in the very beginning, right?
Yeah, I think, you know what the worry comes from? My worry nowadays, and you might understand this as a mom, and those of you out there watching might understand it as well. I worry for our children. I worry for my child. I worry for your children.
Yes.
I worry that you know, we know that the school system, the education system is a system.
Yes.
Right. Yes. So I worry as our little ones learn to navigate this world, and our little ones have intersectionality that we may not have.
Yeah.
Right. And there's going to be pieces that we get. There's going to be pieces that we don't get. So how do we help them to be able to understand and to navigate? That's my worry.
Yeah. Oh.
Right. That's my worry.
We think we know, but there's always something new. Every day there's something new that comes up, and it's just what do we do? What do my heart hurts. Like, this is my heartbeat walking on earth out of my body. And I have to.
I say that all the time. My little heartbeat has legs.
Okay, you know, let them go. And it's just, it's I'm hurting all the time. But, you know, I'm hopeful that these conversations that, you know, you and I are having right now, and that there are so many people that are just horrified about what we've just learned in the news about these 750 people. People are enraged and they're upset about it. And I think if we get upset about these things, then we're going to do something about it.
Yeah.
So that our own kids don't hurt this way.
Exactly. And that we raise socially conscious people, right?
Yes.
So that you don't have 20-year-olds feeling the privilege of getting a van and running into families while they're out on an evening walk. Like, these are the things, like, think about that. Like, those are the things, like, what does a 20-year-old, I don't even know, like a 20-year-old thinking they have that much, what, I don't even know, Debbie, like, what is it? Privilege? Like,
what is that word?
Like, you know, like, I don't know.
You the 20 years and you think a certain way, and that yeah, I can't even get into it, Natasha, because that's a whole nother level.
Right? Where there's like generations of families who are trying to like live their lives. And not given the ability to. Like, how many times do we leave our house to go for a walk or a bike ride or
right? And now we have to fear that we can't even do that.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah. So painful.
I think that, you know,
I'm feeling. Well, I mean, but are you hopeful though that
I am? You know what? I'm being mindful to hold space for both, and I say this a lot when I speak as well, and also with clients. Holding space for both truths.
Okay. Yeah.
It's important. It's important because if we don't hold space for both truth or multiple truths at the same time, that means one of those truths will win, essentially.
Yeah.
Right. So we have to, just how you're sitting in your home, I'm sitting in my home, all those out there, you're sitting wherever you're sitting and you're tuning in. We have to hold space for multiple truths at the same time. So I do have hope.
Yes.
Right. I do have hope.
Great. Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. You know, Oprah has this new book. I don't know, I'm on social media, it's this new book. And I believe, I hope I have this right, that the title is What Happened to You? And that's a question that, you know, she asks, what happened to you? And I think, you know, if that was the question that I asked you at the very beginning, you were able to answer that. What happened to you? And what happened to you is that
Sorry, Debbie, I froze for a second.
That's okay. No, I know. I don't know if you can still hear me. So, you know, asking that question, what happened to you? And what happened to you is that you went through this journey. You're going through this journey. And your tagline, I know, is at the end of all your social media posts, is journeying with you. Like, yes. I love that. I love that, because that it means that we're not doing this alone. You are on your own journey. You're not done. You're not done.
Not done. And I say this to my clients that, you know what, just as you are going through this stage of your journey, I'm also on a journey. I may be a little further ahead in the sand than you, but know that we are walking together, right? Know that we're walking together. Know that, and know also that you can do this. You can take those steps. The steps are going to be hard. There's going to be times when you feel like the sand is quicksand, but you can take another step and go forward. That's what it is. That's what it's about. It's like, we've most of us, a lot of us have had really awful things that have happened throughout our life. A lot of us have also had at the same time really good things that have happened through our life. So how do we learn to hold space and validate the bad and validate the good and take what we need to move forward?
Yeah, that's right.
So we can get to where we want to get to.
Yes. Tell us what's up with you. What are you doing now? What are you working on? What's
cooking? What do I have going on? So as I mentioned throughout, like offering clinical consultation, I have a few things that are in the works, or I'm not ready to tell just as yet. I'm not ready to tell, right? They're still being worked on in the back burners, but definitely have a lot of things that I'm working on. I'm working on getting my website up and revamped. I am working on getting some other stuff going on in terms of the clinical consultation, the speaking, the therapy, the one-on-one therapy, right? So there's a couple of things that are in the works for like September, which I'm super excited about. I mean, been having actually a couple of phone calls that people are looking to book me for September. So anyone looking to book for September, October, I'm now booking for that time.
Far down the line you're booking, right? Never mind summer.
never time like my July is like packed already. But yeah, and also, you know what, throughout the summer I'm really looking forward to having some family time and some downtime and getting some of the stuff that I'm working on up and running for fall. So yeah, definitely stay tuned, stay locked on to my social media, my Facebook, my Instagram, LinkedIn as well. I'm going to be trying to post more on LinkedIn. Yeah, I'm looking forward to have something coming out in October that I'm looking forward to as well. I'm not gonna spoil that surprise. There's some juicy stuff coming, as Moni Good said, right? There's some juicy stuff coming out in September. So looking forward to taking some time off in the summer to be ready for all of those things.
That's right. And that's the thing though, right? That you are showing up for the community. You're showing up for multiple communities, right? And it's really kind of just knowing that there is that stigma out there, but we're working towards erasing that. We're working towards supporting it. And as you say, journeying together throughout all of this.
Right?
So just so fantastic, so fantastic. And I think that we should also even mention that, we talked about the Indigenous community and just throwing our support out to them as well, right? Because we could talk about the things that are happening in the Black community. Think about what's happening in the Indigenous community, that they are not alone in this, and that we're with them in all of that as well.
We're with them, and we do stand in solidarity. And I think the solidarity is important, knowing that we as in the Black community stand in solidarity with our Indigenous brothers and sisters, because colonialization has had a huge impact on both our ancestors. Right? And both our ancestors in the past and our ancestors that still live in us today had a huge impact that we are still, I don't want to say still fighting, but also in some vein, it's like we're still trying to overcome. Right? I mean, you think about like with the residential school system, the children that were taken, I see that as how okay, sorry about that. Yeah, so I equate that to how children have been taken away from the parents on a plantation, right? There's a similarity there. Right? There's a similarity there when we think about that. So definitely standing in solidarity. And also with our Asian community. I mean, I know we didn't get to any stats tonight, but I know that the numbers in terms of racism have gone up right across Canada.
Do you have stats on that?
I know this is specific to Vancouver, so an increase of racism around throughout Canada, but specifically in Vancouver, the racism against the Asian community has gone up by 97%.
And that is unbelievable, because they have a high population of the Asian community.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But I mean, that equates to both, right? I mean, because there's a high population, there's a lot of individuals who are then experiencing the racism.
And is that because we're talking about COVID, or is that the reason why, or what is the reason?
Well, I cannot speak exactly to what the reason is, but I think that what contributes to the reason is COVID, and we've had certain peoples referring to COVID as a certain nationalities, right? We've had things that were said like that, and some people have internalized that as true, and
unbelievable.
Wow. There's work to be done, right? As we were saying, to bridge the gap, there's work to be done, obviously, and there's also work that is being done. And I think that more work needs to be done on a governmental policy procedure level, so that we can really have systemic change.
And then we all need to be part of that. we need to be part of that change. We need to make that effort to be part of that as well. So
exactly.
Oh, so good, Natasha. So good for our final one. I'm so thankful to you.
Well, Debbie, are you on mute? Can you hear me? I can't hear you.
I don't know why. Oh,
okay.
Hold on.
Okay,
hold on.
a little bit better.
Okay, good. Sorry. Technology. One day we'll do this in person, Natasha.
Yes, one day. Let's like put that out into the atmosphere and say yes.
It'll be in person, and it's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. So I want to thank you so much, Natasha. Thank you for being here. Thank you for talking with us. Thank you for educating us. And let's keep being hopeful, right? Keep being hopeful for that change and being a part of it. So yeah, awesome.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, Debbie, for having me, for hosting me. Thank you to Uplift Black and Rachel for getting us together to do this, because definitely it's been a great conversation. So thank you again.
Oh, no problem. No problem. So great. So wonderful. And we will hopefully do it again.
Yes,
do it again.
Yes. Let's put it in our calendars and we'll do it.
Do it again. Absolutely. And thank you all for watching. Whether you're watching this live or you're watching this, on the repeat or whatever it is, you download it and you watch it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've learned a lot. I hope that there's something in there that really sparks a fire in you to be a part of that change, to really recognize what's going on and to actually do something about it. And if you need mental health support for yourself, know that it is okay. Reach out. It's there. Reach out and get that help and that support.
Reach out, get the help, support. If you need ways to navigate, you can reach out to both Debbie and myself and Uplift Black and different community organizations and get the help. Don't do this alone.
Absolutely. You said it right there, Natasha. Don't do it alone. Journeying with you.
Journeying with you. Journeying with you. Be blessed, everybody. Good night.
Take care.
Bye.